The Connection Gathering. Inspiring hope, health, and healing. Connecting the dots of your story to transform your life. Connect with us on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. Well, welcome to the Connection Gathering today, inspiring hope, health, and healing on this rainy day in Branson, Missouri, with amazing guest we have on the show today, Miss Eleeya Grace. Welcome to the show, Eleeya.
Thank you.
We have just some amazing stuff to share with you today. And listeners, as you listen to Eleeya share the good, the bad, and the painful parts of her lives, we hope that you'll have an openness within your own heart and look for the similarities in her story with yours instead of the differences. And we hope today that your life will be transformed. For with that opening, Eleeya, start in with us, if you wouldn't mind, as a little girl growing up. Share with us from your childhood, going through grammar school, junior high, high school, and then bring us all the way forward to today, if you wouldn't mind taking us on a journey of hope, health, and healing.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, my earliest memories of being a baby, actually, I remember my mom and dad changing my diapers and feeding me. And starting out, it was just like my mom and dad, they were very, very strict. They could be loving at times, but very strict, very restrictive, you know. And during my childhood, it was like more like a prison. My dad he worked all the time. He was gone a lot. Mom was with us kids. And we weren't allowed to play outside hardly. We weren't allowed to have very many privileges like other kids because they were afraid that we would get hurt and they'd have doctor bills. I didn't find that out till we were older. And I was the oldest. My sister Jenny was next, my brother David, and my sister Melody. She was the very youngest. She was 8 years younger than me. And what I remember all through my childhood, a lot of cussing and being hit all the time and picked up by the hair. But I kind of don't like to talk about it all the time because I forgive my parents. And my mom and I, we have a pretty good relationship now. But as we grew older, things got worse. My dad was he was a tyrant. He was older than my mom and trapped my mom at a very young age. She met him when she was a teenager, married him when she was 18. Mm-hmm. He helped her with a lot of stuff because she was raised by her grandparents. And he more or less trapped her because she was inexperienced. He was older. He could not find anybody that would put up with him. I just don't see it. And he was married once before, and they were divorced. And he saw my mom, as a very vulnerable, inexperienced lady. And so my dad kept us all away from all of our other relatives because he did not want a secret of how mean he really was to all the family, did not want that told to us, didn't want my mom to leave him. So we were kept in a cage, more or less. And we weren't taught hardly anything. And for some uncanny reason, my mom and dad, during grade school, actually when I was in kindergarten, my hair was really long. And I made the big mistake of wanting to have it cut like all my other classmates in kindergarten. And they cut it off real short, butch haircut. And I would have to wear that all through my childhood, looking like a boy and teased about looking like a boy. That was, I can kind of laugh about it now, but when I was growing up, that wasn't funny. And then when I was a teenager, oh boy, this really tops it off. I don't know why my mom would do this to me, but she'd go to Montgomery Ward's and buy granny clothes and jewelry to go with the beautiful clothes. And I would have to wear that to school when I was a teenager. And talk about being made fun of. Talk about being bullied. But I figured that could be part of a comedy routine for me. Whenever I sing different places, not to sing in those clothes, but do that at the very end. Go backstage and dress up like a granny and come out and start dancing. But and then
So when you went to school with the crew cut haircut and the granny clothes, and for those of you listening that have gone through the pain of being bullied by peers in school, can you go in more depth of what the bullying was like for you, Eleeya, and what you went through with that?
oh man, I was suicidal. Of course, I was very depressed. I was a good student. I was exceptionally good in English and literature, spelling, and I was real good in music, but I didn't get into music until I was a teenager. But I used to write stories. It came real easy for me. And I was very hyper as a kid. Now, whenever I was like a little kid going to school, that's when I'd have the crew cut. But when I was a teenager, I was allowed to have my hair bushed out like everybody's, the big hair of the 80s. And then I would have the granny clothes and the dorky jewelry. And of course, I'd wear a lot of makeup too. So add that to granny clothes. It was just absolutely humiliating. And I could not talk to people because I was paralyzed. I mean, I was paralyzed, afraid to even say anything.
So did you have any friends then growing up? Did you have anyone that connected with you either in grammar school when you were going through the crew cut stage and or the granny stage with the clothes? Did you connect with anyone?
Actually, okay, this is probably the best part of my childhood. We had neighbors that we were close to. And that was the only friend I had during grade school. And then when I got to a certain age, my mom and dad got mad at them for something stupid. So they took that privilege away. And that's probably the only happy thing I remember from my childhood was the friends with the neighbors.
And then that was taken away.
That was taken away like everything else.
Now, because you were so confined to the home and not connected with others, did you have a relationship, a close relationship with your siblings?
Mhm. Well, when we were kids, yes, because all we had was each other.
Yes.
But I had my sister Jenny. She was a thief from the very beginning. I had to share a room with her. We squabbled a lot. It got worse as we got older. Everything got worse when we got older. But I luckily had an overactive imagination, and I was very hyper. Pretty smart, but I was stubborn, and I still am. But anyway, I wrote stories. That was my release. I wrote short stories, novels, and my teachers told me I was exceptionally good, and to keep up with that I would be an author.
And the stories
someday.
you wrote, were they stories about your life?
No,
No, you just make believe.
I just make up stuff. I was really good at that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like that was your fantasy world to write stories of what you had hoped for versus what you were living in.
Yeah, I just come up with ideas just out of the blue. And when I was a teenager, in spite of the granny clothes and everything, I was writing people's book reports for them based on my own ideals.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'd get A's, so they would come to me for that. But I could not open up to them, even when people would try to get me to open up and stuff. And oh, my lands. One of my classmates had felt sorry for me, I guess. And she would take me to her house and she'd give me an outfit that was in style for me to borrow. I was I was just in hog heaven, actually going to school and wearing a normal outfit. And people would pay attention to me. I didn't know what to think.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't used to the positive attention, so I did not know what to think.
Mm-hmm. So going through this with your dad, especially your father, was he alcoholic? Was he?
No,
No, so most of his issues were emotional anger.
he was a rageaholic. I always thought, well, maybe if he had a few shots of whiskey, that would, mellow him out a little bit. Because
Mm-hmm.
alcoholism runs in our family really bad on my mom and dad's side of the family.
So what was his parents like? Your father's parents?
They let him run wild.
Mm-hmm.
They let him do everything he wanted, and that was probably what was wrong with him. No guidance,
No boundaries.
no boundaries whatsoever. His dad was very passive. His mother was good. She's the only positive person I've ever heard anything, anything good about was her.
Was her. So with your dad having no boundaries and running wild as a child, he has children, and instead of them being able to have freedom, he locks them up and says, you can't do anything. So he takes all privileges away where he had unlimited privileges.
More or less.
Mm-hmm.
Controlled my mom all the time. He never hit her, but he was emotionally abusive to her.
Mm-hmm.
Very controlling. She had no life. He was God to her. I remember her asking him what the weather was going to be like the next day. Just random stupid questions. You think it's anything serious? Or just, she depended on him for everything. And
Mm-hmm. So then was your mother emotionally abusive as a result to you as well? And the
oh yeah,
kids?
yes.
So she would say emotionally abusive
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
But now, did she become physically
She was
abusive?
physically abusive too.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I'd say probably the one thing that stands out with me the most was when I was 10 years old, and it was in the summertime. We were bored, being stuck in all the time. The only privilege we got as a child was to go out in the water sprinklers. Anyways, I was bored, and I filled up a potato chip bag of water, and it exploded. And I remembered, I remember my mom just completely flipping out and being more aggressive and abusive than usual. I had bruises all over my back and arms and legs. She pulled my hair, and my neck and head hurt, and was throwing hairspray bottles at me on the toilet in the restroom. And scratches, bruises. It was
And
pretty,
that was because the water spilled in the home?
yeah,
Okay.
on the carpet.
And she got upset about that? Yeah.
And every time we'd get in trouble about something, she'd say, wait till your dad finds out. And so the next day, Dad found out about it, and he actually laughed,
Mm-hmm.
surprisingly.
Mm-hmm.
It was always like, wait till I tell your dad. And then when he would be at work during the day, if we wanted to do something like go to the neighbor's house or go bike riding, she'd have to call him at work and ask if it was okay.
Ask permission if you guys could have some privileges.
Yes.
And then he would have to tell your mom.
Okay.
And he's busy working, so he's like, I don't care. But, no, they can't do anything.
Oh, man. I have to laugh about some of the crazy stuff now.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the laughter is a defense mechanism for the pain and
Yeah.
struggles that we go through in life. So many times laughter kind of fills that void. So
Yeah.
so with that, with emotional and physical abuse, was there any sexual abuse that you went
No.
through at all with anyone in your family or outside of the family growing up?
There wasn't any sexual abuse, but my dad could be verbal about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That would make us feel yucky, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That, I guess, is a form, isn't it? I would
Mm-hmm.
think.
Yeah. So, is there any other stories that you can share with us that the audience can connect with that you went through growing up? Growing up.
Well, my grandma, I didn't even know I had a grandma until I was about 7 or 8. And when I started getting attached to her and then some of my other relatives, whenever I got older, like in my teenage years, my mom would purposely, and dad, but my mom was the worst. She would turn them against us kids, make us out to be terrible, terrible delinquents because we wanted freedom. And if we'd go out and take a walk, we'd get in trouble. Remember my dad coming after me because I was into working out all the time, jogging and walking and jump roping. And I'd be out, jogging. My dad would come up behind me in this big boat of a car, honking his horn. And I'd have to get in the car and he'd take me home. And my mom would threaten me to put me in a mental institution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If we wanted any kind of freedom or got hung up on anything, like I used to like to read all the time, I was a bookworm, and they wanted to put me in a mental hospital for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then writing stories, they thought that was goofy. And then I got into music when I was a teenager. And because of my mom and dad being overly critical, I didn't want to sing around them. I'd hide to go somewhere and sing because that was my passion among everything.
Mm-hmm.
That surpassed the writing and using my imagination and being goofy. Singing became my passion.
And along the way with the singing and with the insanity at the house, did your grandparents and or your parents ever have excuse me, any relationship with God? And did church ever come into play growing up?
Actually, they were Baptists. They believed once saved, always saved. You learn what it's all about. You get saved, and you don't have to go to church after that. You don't have to grow spiritually. And my mom, I remember distinctly, whenever I was about 7 years old, she got saved. And then we started going to the Baptist church, First Baptist Church in Main Street, Eureka, Missouri. And we started going to Bible school. And I started getting really, really interested in the things of God. And I think maybe I was called at that age because I became infatuated with God and Jesus and Bible stories. And my mom would say, well, if you don't mind us, you're going to go to hell. You got to be good because God is watching you. That was instilled a lot whenever she first got saved.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a manipulation thing, but
Mm-hmm. So going to church and Bible school, did you start to feel connected there with the church leaders or the Bible study leaders or any of the little kids at the church? Did you feel more loved and connected there?
whenever I was in Bible school, as vacation Bible school as a child, I'd say that was a good thing in my childhood because I love the arts and crafts and the music. So yeah, I had a connection with music at that time, very young, but
Mm-hmm.
not to go professional at that time. That was unheard of. But when I got older, I was obsessed with Whitney Houston and Patti LaBelle and all the famous singers at that time. But I became obsessed with pop music.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was 19 and I did a show for the Uric reunion, I sang gospel because that's all I had in tracks was gospel. Everybody was telling me how great I was as a gospel singer. And I couldn't believe it. People would have tears coming out of their eyes saying, that's what you should be doing, singing that instead of Whitney Houston or Mariah Carey, sing that kind of stuff. Because that's where your gifting is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what everybody kept telling me. It wasn't just, then my mom actually thought I was really great when she finally heard me at 19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until 19 that they'd ever heard me sing. But I remember whenever I was a sophomore in high school, I was singing all the time in school, and they thought I was exceptionally good. If I to keep it up, I'd be exceptionally good, and we'll try to get you a scholarship. I remember telling my mom this on a walk. I tried to get her to walk with me after school every day, after always a bad day at school. And that was hard to get her to walk with me. But I would tell her the news. I'd say, yes, if I keep practicing, my music teacher said that I could win a scholarship. First thing she said that hurt me more than anything was, your talents exist elsewhere. She'd never even heard me and said that. And she says, well, to get a scholarship, you got to be really, really good. I mean, that cut like a knife hearing that when you're like, oh, how old was I? About 16,
Mm-hmm.
and just getting into music.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, Mom, I was in tears. And I said, Mom, you've never heard me. Why do you have to be so negative about everything? And she says, well, and she caught herself, I guess, because she saw how upset I was. And she says, well, you'll have to prove it to me and your dad. We'll be the judges on how good you are. I didn't sing in front of them until I was 19. I kept it a secret.
Because you were so petrified, they'd say you weren't, excuse me, good enough.
Yeah, like everything. Us
Mm-hmm.
kids were taught that at a young age. We're not good enough.
Mm-hmm. So along that journey, Eleeya, through grammar school and high school, and then 19, did you start to have, my voice is going, excuse me, did you start to have any relationships with men or boys and have any boyfriends
Oh,
or
boy.
anything of that came into play with you?
I wasn't allowed, of course, because my weird family, but I was in love. I was in love with somebody, but it was more like a Romeo and Juliet type of thing. And because my parents hated everybody, I was in love. I was in love with the neighbor boy.
This was one of the neighbor boys that you were friends with growing up that then they
Mm-hmm.
told you couldn't hang out
Yeah,
with.
yeah.
And so was he in love with you as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he wanted to be with me and everything, but every time my mom and dad would leave, we'd have to sneak just to visit each other. It was nothing wasn't sexual or anything, because I was a good girl that read my Bible and I kept to myself. And I no, my mom and dad drilled in my head whenever I was young. You don't have sex until you're married. And then once I did finally run away from home at 21, I decided I'm not going to ever get married, because I realized me and the neighbor boy was never going to be together.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized my dream of music probably wasn't ever going to happen. Things just kept getting worse at home. My dad had it out for my brother more than the rest of us kids. He got the worst abuse.
Mm-hmm.
He was starting it. Well, my dad was a bully with all of us kids. And my mom she had to constantly take dad's side, or he would threaten to, leave her and all that kind of thing. And he was the only thing she had. So everything just kept getting crazier and crazier the older we got.
So at 21 then, Did you save money before you left? How did you leave and where did you go?
I wasn't allowed to have money.
Okay, so how did you leave and where did you go?
I was going out with my friends, and one night I just didn't come home. They talked me into getting out of there. I left everything behind and didn't come home. I had had enough. It got so chaotic, so insane. If Dad wasn't starting on my brother, he was starting in on all of us. Got worse and worse and worse.
Okay. So where did you go then? So you left, and I mean, so where did you leave and go to? Did
Friends,
friends' homes? You just moved in with some friends
yeah,
and stayed with them?
they had to keep talking me into it. Had to keep talking me into it.
Okay.
Didn't really want to because I was scared. I was scared to death.
So were you in the same neighborhood or was it in a different city?
In the same town, actually.
And did they know where you were, your mother and father?
Oh, they knew my family was nuts.
Okay.
I couldn't understand it.
But I mean, did your family know where you were? And
Oh, they knew it.
did they
yeah.
try to do anything to
Oh,
force
yeah.
you back home?
Oh, they went to the courthouse.
Well, you were 21. You could go anywhere you wanted at
No,
21.
I know, but they didn't. They kept trying to think that I couldn't.
Yeah.
They kept
But
trying to
the
tell
court,
me.
the court could care less when you're 21.
Yeah.
So then so you left at 21 and you
Mm-hmm.
moved with your friends. So what happened next in your life? Take us on that next journey
Mm-hmm.
from 21. And did you ever get married or did you ever have any relationships or what did your life look like once you finally got set free from your family?
I was working and I'm trying to save money as much as I could. I worked. Whenever I wasn't working, I started out as a social drinker. I would party and I'd drink to cope because that's the only way I could cope with the pain in my heart. Work and drink, work and drink. Of course, I was young, I could handle that, and one adventure after another. And through the years, naturally, it got worse and worse, my drinking, because my life got worse and worse. And I had a chance to be in relationships with guys, but I never would want to be in a relationship because I wouldn't want to be controlled like my mom was with my dad. That's always been a fear with me. Always. I had a lot of nice guys come and go, but there's very few I'd ever had anything to do with. There was a guy when I was 23 that I met. He was into music like I was. Real gentleman, really good looking, nice, funny. And I wrote that because he mentioned marriage and kids, and I thought, no, 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 no. So I ran from that real fast.
So really no marriages then, just a few relationships here and there, correct?
Yes, but I finally did get married. Thought I met the man of my dreams at 32, got married at 33, and divorced. I left.
And why did that marriage end?
I forgive him. We're still friends. I forgive everybody. And as you know, forgiveness is a journey. It takes time. But control, a lot of control. He wasn't stable. He was living off of other people, moving in on other people, taking from them. Everything was all about him and his family. He was obsessed with his family. And
And so how long were the two of you married?
2 years.
2 years. And during that time, were you still drinking quite heavily?
When I married him, I didn't drink. I stopped drinking for a year and a half.
Okay. And then after the divorce, did you continue drinking again?
I started back in the drinking and partying because my uncle was dying of cancer, and I came back to Uric. Was with my aunt to help take care of him before he passed. I wanted to see him before he passed. And I got there just in time. I was there to just say goodbye for a day and a half. Then he passed. And I was just going to stay for 2 weeks to help my aunt financially because I had a job already lined up for me whenever I got back. So I couldn't go back. After 2 weeks, I could not go back. I figured, even though we had a child, I could not go back to that. Because our child was over at his sister's all the time.
You had a
anyway.
child?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, you didn't mention that. So
I,
where it was the child from your marriage, or
from my marriage, yes.
and how old is your child today?
He'll be 18 January 2nd, the day before my birthday.
Okay. So you raised him by yourself?
It was kind of a deal where my ex-husband's sister raised him.
Okay. And do you guys have a relationship today?
Actually, we talk every now and then, but my son's aunt that was taking care of him passed away here recently. Pancreatic cancer. So he's with other family members, and he really don't want to talk to anybody right now.
So with the drinking, did it escalate into alcoholism?
Oh, yes.
And did you have any issues with drinking and driving or anything that did a trajectory in your life there?
Actually, my drinking went from bad to worse at the age of 23 on up, kept getting worse. And I didn't drive until I was 26. And then I got into kind of a relationship with the guy that I worked for, and sadly was living with him. He bought me a car and everything, and it was it was a rough go of it. I worked for him, and I don't want to talk too much more about that.
Okay.
I can't say we had done right by each other, all the time, but he did kind of help me. He knew what I was coming from a little bit.
And so we're again going back to the drinking and the driving. Did you have any DUIs that came about where you ended up losing your license, or were you able to get through the drinking?
My drinking went from bad to worse, and I was in and out of the hospital there at the very last. Well, actually, the last. Oh, geez. Oh, it started. Golly. The first hospital visit was in 1994, September 94. And then as time went on, it got worse. Whenever I was probably getting worse was in 2010. That's when the hospital visits from coming down off alcohol or drinking too much got worse and worse and worse. And almost died several times. Put on life support. I'm drinking 2 gallons of whiskey. People thought I died.
So alcohol poisoning.
Yeah, and then
Did you go to treatment then? Did they put you in treatment centers? No.
I didn't want to go because I figured, it wouldn't help. And then I ended up having 3 DWIs. The first one in 2008, and then 2 back to back in 2011. So I'm still working on the driver's license thing. But
And how long have you been sober now?
I've been sober. It'll be 4 years next month. Hallelujah.
Praise God. Praise
It's
God.
a miracle because nobody thought I'd be able to come out of it. I didn't think I would either.
Yeah.
And it's just a divine miracle. Being up all night, not being able to go to sleep, feeling in so much torment. I literally felt like I was in hell the last couple of times before I finally quit. I felt like I was in hell, burning up. When I would finally fall asleep, which I couldn't hardly, but when I finally did, I felt like I was on fire, torment. I'd wake up crying and I would be pacing the floors, unable to go back to sleep, asking God to help me. I'd be like, God help me. God help me.
Well, thank you so much. So let's pause for just a moment so you can see Eleeya's bio and be able to see that, and it'll be on the screen here for just a moment. We'll put that up. And so this is how to reach out to Eleeya. It's got her Facebook page and connect with Eleeya. So Eleeya, in the final moments that we have together, if you can bring us to the current, and what are you doing today? And I know that there is a song that has to do with the little bird with the broken wings. So can you bring us to the end of what are you doing today in your life?
I just recorded Little Bird with a Broken Wing, and I'm getting ready to put it out and promote it and start singing it at women's groups and healing groups, because I believe that all alcoholics and drug addicts and broken people, they are little birds with a broken wing, and they eventually learn to fly. And I'm also a part of the Jimmy Jack Foundation for Kids, helping kids' musical dreams come true. Because whenever I was young, that was my musical dream, and I would have given anything in the world if there'd been something like that when I was younger, because there would have been no stopping me whatsoever. So I help children, underprivileged kids, and kids in general join this foundation where we give away instruments and give them headway on a music career to win scholarships and such stuff like that.
And so your dream today is still to be able to get hired to sing at events. So if any of you are listening to
Yes.
Eleeya's story and the heart she has for others, please reach out to her through her Facebook page. And she loves to sing, and she
Mhm.
really wants to be able to
Yes.
utilize her voice for singing. Excuse me. And so with that, I understand you're doing some mentorship as well program.
Yes, I'm going through mentorship and discipleship at Sanctuary of Hope with Deborah Brand
Mhm.
to become a licensed mentor out in the community with broken people and alcoholics and drug addicts, people like myself.
So with that, everyone listening, the connection gathering starting in January is going to be beginning here at X Media location here in Springfield, Missouri. We're going to begin having connection gathering groups where you can join us on a Sunday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and gather together in community to share story, to serve each other, to mentor with each other, to grow with each other. So, no matter where you are in your own personal journey, it's stories like Eleeya's sharing today where she felt isolated, she felt trapped in totally traumatized through her childhood. And if you can relate to any of her story and you feel too like you'd love to be in community with other women and connect, we would love for you to be part of the connection gathering. So, how do you do this? I have a website myself, which is called Brave Heart Workshops with an S on the end, braveheartworkshops.com, where you'll see on the contact page my email address and my phone number. Please reach out to me so I can gather your names, and then I'll be able to personally reach out to you when we begin these connection gatherings so you could
Mhm.
join us. We'd love you to be part of the community. And Eleeya, we hope that
Yes,
you'll be part of the community to help
definitely.
serve and mentor these other women because you've
Yes.
been on such a painful journey yourself. I know because I've gotten to know you that you're continuing on that journey of wholeness in your
Yes, I
life.
am. Yes, I
Yes,
am. Thanks.
yes,
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here, because it's definitely a privilege. If I can help other people with my story, I definitely will, for
yes.
sure.
So, with that, we have a couple of sponsors for our show that I'd like to address. The one that I'd love to connect you with today is a company I met called Holy Hydrogen. And what I love about their product is, number one, they're a Christian company. And I've never realized that our bodies need hydrogen to be able to fully heal from trauma and from cellular growth within our body. And so, hydrogen water is one of the best sources for healing your body and your mind. I've seen their website, Holy Hydrogen's website, to see testimonials of people who have struggled for years with inflammation, lupus, different diseases. And the hydrogen water has really healed their body. They also have a mechanism where you have a headphone, and as you create the hydrogen water in a tube that from their product, you actually take that tube and you can sit and read a book, and you can breathe in the hydrogen for about 30 minutes each day. And by breathing it in, it literally heals the cellular damage in your body and reduces PTSD and inflammation in your body. So if you go again to my website, braveheartworkshops.com, there is a page called Affiliate Partners where you can click on that page and it will bring you to Holy Hydrogen's page, and you'll receive $100 off by clicking on my site. So please go to Holy Hydrogen today. My other partner that I love is Amari Global, the mental wellness company, Eleeya. And yesterday, I don't know if you know, was Mental Wellness Day,
Oh, wow.
Mental Wellness Awareness. And so the Amari Global company, again, go to the website, click on their link through my website, has a product called Mood, and it has significantly decreased anxiety and stress in the body with an organic product. So I think you'd really love the Amari Global product. And so please go to those. And in closing, again, with Eleeya, I thank you so much for being a guest on the Connection Gathering. Is there anything, just in the last couple of minutes here, a minute or so, could you give us a few sentences or words from your song, if you wouldn't mind sharing the words?
Walking along, I found a little bird with a broken wing that could not fly. I picked him up and I looked around and I found its nest and I started to climb. When I finally reached the top, I looked inside and what did I find? All that was left was an empty nest, leaving the little bird with the broken wing behind. So that's part of the words.
So any of you out there who have felt like a little bird who's fallen sometimes from a nest, and then you end up with a broken wing or a broken heart or a broken soul, know that God loves you and that we love you and that we would love to stay connected with you in community and that you're not alone. We look forward to you joining us on the Connection Gathering. And next week, we have an amazing guest that will be joining us. She's actually got a show here on X Media. So I'll surprise you next week to see who's going to be on our show, sharing her story of hope, health, and healing. So thanks again for joining us on the Connection Gathering. We look forward to seeing you every Thursday from 11 a.m. till 11:45. Have a wonderful day. The Connection Gathering. Thanks for joining us, connecting unity in Christ through the Holy Spirit. AMG Broadcasting thanks you for being a faithful listener, supporter, and sponsor. Help to keep our programs on the air, support us, and donate today. To donate, please go to axmediagroup.com. Subscribe to our channels now and don't miss any episodes. The Axe Media AMG Broadcasting YouTube and Rumble channels are below. Please like our social media sites also.